Out of curiosity, on a Sunday afternoon in November, I walked by 175 Nepean Street in my home city of Ottawa. I'm sure I'd passed the spot before. It's just a block off of Bank Street, and it's not more than a 5 or 6 minute walk from my favorite Ottawa bookshop, Book Bazaar. The original building that stood on the site in the 1920s is long gone, and from the street, only 177 and 171 are visible. But the address of 175 was, for a brief period of time, home to one of Canada's early publishing houses. From 1925 until they declared bankruptcy in 1932, graphic publishers sought out Canadian authors and they produced beautiful, well-made books for a Canadian audience. Poet and translator Watson Kirkconnell, writing in a letter in 1970, summed up Graphic's venture as a project born 40 years too soon. By the 1970s, there was an appetite for Canadian literature and an appetite for Canadian books in Canadian editions. Laurentian Library and New Canadian Library have a special place in literary history as two publishing ventures that met and grew this appetite. But as Kirkconnell said, graphic publishers arrived on the scene too soon in a time when the appetite for those things wasn't so big, and in a city which wasn't a publishing center. Even today, Graphic's tangible legacy is scattered. I learned all I could about Graphic from a 1992 pamphlet published by the Historical Society of Ottawa, from a short 1979 article from David B. Coton, and from the footnotes of other books. For the most part, graphic publishers seems to sit comfortably as a footnote, but I think the books really speak for themselves. The end papers are what first caught my eye when I stumbled across my first graphic publisher's book. Inside my copy of Frederick Philip Grove's A Search for America, the end papers, designed by Alan B. Bedeau, feature a cubed pattern of stamp-like images in orange and black, with what I've come to recognize as graphic publisher's iconic Thunderbird. The Thunderbird emblem itself is featured on the spine of almost every book they published, with the exception of a few. One of the exceptions that I've discovered is their very first title, The Land of the Afternoon. When this book arrived in the mail for me, I saw that there was no Thunderbird logo on the spine. What caught my eye after the Thunderbird emblem end papers was their Ottawa, Ontario publishing location. Even today, in 2021, when I pick up a book from a Canadian publisher, I expect to see their location listed as Toronto or Montreal. Occasionally you see Vancouver or Winnipeg. And my initial thought upon seeing the Ottawa location was, well, they must no longer exist, because if they did still exist, I'd know about them. Ottawa may be home to just over 1 million sprawling people, but it does remain a small city, and its reputation for art and culture is secondary to more prominent cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And at present, Ottawa has just a handful of active publishers, and none of them publish on a broad scale for a wide audience. They offer mainly periodicals, religious works, print-on-demand services, and educational material. As it was in the days of graphic publishers, Ottawa is not a center for publishing or printing. For that, you do have to go to Toronto or a city like that. So you understand it was quite surprising to come across Graphic's existence. Graphic Publishers Limited, sometimes referred to as Graphic Press, published only 71 titles under the Graphic imprint before they closed their doors. Somewhat puzzling are the 14 other titles also published by Graphic during these years under 3 other imprints: Rumilu Publications, the Carillion Book Club, and Ariston Publishers Limited. Graphic Publishers' output includes a broad array of titles. There's everything from poetry, plays, novels, essays, history, and criticism. It's as though the editor's ambitions outpaced their resources. Even in 1931, as graphic was on its last legs, editor and author Frederick Philip Grove tried to begin a new project to publish early Canadian literature. Cheadle's Journal of Trip Across Canada, 1862 to 1863, published by the press in 1931, was one of only 4 books published in what was meant to be the Canada series. In talking about the Canada series, the Historical Society of Ottawa quotes a publisher's catalogue, a catalogue which I have been unable to get my own hands on, and says that the Canada series was designed ultimately to embrace the whole of the older worthwhile literature concerning Canada, from the report of Cartier and Champlain down to the very end of exploration, which is still so recent. And Cheadle's Journal has made its way into my collection, and it was my 6th graphic publisher's purchase. But before I came across Cheadle, curiosity led me to find and purchase 4 other titles from Graphic. Out of the Wilderness by Wilson MacDonald, and Over the Gangplank to Spain and Shackles by Madge Macbeth. Macbeth was also the author of the 4th title I purchased, Graphic's first book, The Land of the Afternoon, which was a satire written by Macbeth under the nom de plume, under the pen name Gilbert Knox. And when I read The Land of the Afternoon, I understood why Macbeth would want to publish this book under another name. Although the dialogue and the plot are somewhat mundane, and the book's focus is on the day-to-day life of a new member of Parliament's wife, it shows all the signs of mirroring the lives of real people and politicians. Having purchased and read 4 Graphics titles, I was hooked. And I suspect that this is only the beginning of my journey with Graphic. An entry in the Library and Archives Canada catalogue suggests the existence of a decades-old thesis paper on Graphic. It, no doubt, sits somewhere in the storage facilities beneath the city, where it could probably be retrieved by appointment, possibly someday next year when more of these pandemic restrictions are over. And with 6 of the Graphic titles on my shelves, I am slowly foraging my way forward with a bibliography checklist and hopefully a little bit of good luck as I continue my journey to discover the works of graphic publishers and to discover more about them as a publisher.